Hello, everyone, and welcome to this discussion between PowerPSA, Jesse Miller, and Yoel Platt from Cynomi. Um, Before we start, Jesse, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, hey everyone. I am very excited to be here today and really appreciate Cynomi's partnership and the way we've been working to enable the MSP community. I'm Jesse Miller, founder of PowerPSA Consulting. We help MSPs build security programs, scale them, and do that profitably. And we've really just found a partner in Cynomi in the way that they help enable MSPs to do that, along with our operational blueprints. So we're very excited to be here. And again, let's dive right in.
Great, great. So I'm Yoel Platt, and I lead the business development and partnerships with Cynomi. And it's great to be with you again, Jesse.
Absolutely.
Looking forward to many more. Uh, let's skip I would say the usual question about what is a vCISO, because I'm assuming that whoever is listening to us today already knows what a
Yeah,
vCISO is.
yeah,
And this is really an educational discussion between the two of us. We've
yeah.
jointly published a playbook for the first 100 days with your vCISO service.
Hmm.
And we talk about, or we together you talked about 5 steps, right, to a successful vCISO service.
Yeah.
Um, so really, I would like to ask you, first of all, who should listen to this webinar? Who is that playbook meant for?
Well, yeah, it's I mean, anyone who wants to better deliver vCISO services, but let's narrow that down a little bit. I
Yeah.
think MSPs who are in the market for launching vCISO services or who are already offering them, and again, I might irritate some people, but I'm going to lump MSPs and MSSPs together and say that
Okay.
they're managed security providers or managed service providers delivering vCISO services. And then also, I think solopreneurs or independent consultants who are transitioning from the CISO role to a one-to-many vCISO role, helping customers. I think it's still important for them to really be able to scale and be modular with their service delivery. And then finally, I think customers of vCISO services, people who are looking for a good vCISO partner, can watch this and say, "Hey, am I getting these services the way we're talking about them? Is my vCISO doing things correctly?" And so I think it could be a good double check for customers when they're trying to parse out different partners and see really who's giving them the best holistic service offering.
I totally agree with you. Uh, how can I not?
Yeah.
But seriously, Cynomi published the State of the Virtual CISO report
Mm.
in end of 2023. And anybody who's interested in can download it from the Cynomi website. And the interesting point there was that from 14 or 19% of MSPs that were offering vCISO
Yeah.
services, 84%, 86% said that they're going to be providing them in 2024. And when you add to that the independent CISOs
Yeah.
that are in the market and cyber consultancies that are growing, I think that we can crown 2024 as the vCISO year. What do you think?
Absolutely. It's interesting. And this isn't just a fad because those numbers are too accelerated to just be, I think sometimes MSPs, we can get in an echo chamber and talk about things, but this is market driven. That's what I'm trying to say. We're to a tipping point in the industry. I always tell this anecdote that my dad built a Windows NT networking invoicing system for his HVAC company they worked for many, many years ago. It's probably 30 years ago at this point. And at that time, people were saying, well, we don't need a computer to do business. Well, if you told somebody you didn't need a computer to do business today, they'd laugh you right out of the room, right? And we're getting to that point with security is that the attacks are coming so fast and heavy. There's so much risk. I mean, if I told you that your building had some fire safety issues, you'd jump out of your seat and say, we need to fix that right away.
Right.
But if I ask you, you have cybersecurity issues, which is actually a higher threat to your business than potentially a fire at this point, right? So the market is asking for this, and I think that MSPs need to start offering these services. And if they're not, they're going to find themselves becoming more and more commoditized as the market shifts this direction.
It's interesting because I always say that 3 or 4 years ago, when you were offering cybersecurity to an end user, they would probably say, no, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What I don't see doesn't exist.
Yeah.
But today, after, was it 60%, if not even more, small, medium businesses that have been attacked already,
Right.
everybody understands it's not if you'll be attacked, it's when you'll be attacked.
Mm-hmm.
And I always add it's how many times you'll be attacked if you didn't put those security measures in place, and if
Right.
you're still in business. But also compliance and regulation is coming in,
That's
and
right.
insurance, you're not getting reinsured. So demand is growing dramatically.
Hmm.
And then the MSPs are asking themselves, how do I meet that demand? Right?
Right.
There are a lot of challenges there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a question I talk to many MSPs and they say, oh yeah, we're doing vCISO or we're doing some sort of security. Well, how many clients are asking you about it? I had one MSP tell me, last year maybe we had 20% of our clients asking us about security. He said this year it's 60 or 70% that are asking us about security. And so that is a dramatic shift. And again, meeting that demand, and that's why we were talking, right?
Right.
Because he said, I need help scaling this program. And so this is not uncommon. I think people listening will attest to, hey, we're having these large scale increases and we have a large demand for these services now. Whoa, we got to meet that demand is a whole nother problem.
Right. And I think this was we're probably on the same discussion on LinkedIn or something,
Yeah.
that because you see the independent vCISOs growing and you see the MSPs
Hmm.
providing more and more vCISO services, that I've seen people saying, oh, you have to understand that a vCISO service is not a CISO light. And I think this is where PowerPSA comes in. Can you talk about
Well,
that?
yeah, so I don't love the vCISO light terminology. I think you're inherently devaluing the expertise you're bringing to the client when you use that terminology. So we're vCISO light. Okay, well, what do I think when I hear light? I think not that valuable and not that expensive, right? And I'm not
Right.
saying things need to be expensive, but what I'm saying is that you need to provide real value for your service and you need to be paid fairly to do so. And again, delivering that at scale is one thing we specialize in helping MSPs do, whether helping them build their own programs or doing it for them. I'd like to say,
Mhm.
go and rent a
Partnering up.
vCISO. Right. Yeah, exactly. Which is again why we're talking today. So
Right. Right. Excellent. Maybe one more thing before we dive into the 100-day process that
yeah.
we published. I think I saw you on LinkedIn as well, talking about a client of yours that actually lost a $1 million opportunity deal.
Well, yeah. So this was a client of an MSP that I was working with. Okay. So this is again why I think vCISO services are so important. And selling tools to a client, you're going to miss these kind of revenue opportunities completely. So I'll try to make this brief. But the MSP had brought PowerPSA on. We were building out their full stack security program, including vCISO, an offering for vCISO services. But we weren't there yet. It was a couple months into the relationship. They had and think about this. We always think, okay, small businesses don't need these services. Well, this was a 15-person SaaS startup company that was their client. They were selling a piece of software into large organizations. Think Fortune 50, Fortune 100, Fortune 500,
Nice.
deal sizes in the six-figure range. Well, we asked them. The MSP was actually a little in disbelief. They said, "There's no way they're ever going to pay this for these services." But I said, let's talk to them and said, okay, well, do you have a security budget? What's your security spend? How's it going when you talk to these large organizations? Well, come through that conversation. They disclosed that this company had lost deals because they couldn't meet security requirements to the tune of seven figures, over $1 million in lost revenue because they couldn't meet security client requirements for these customers. So again, worked with the MSP. They used our vCISO team while we were building their program to deliver a security assessment to the client, to come in and find where their gaps were, to recommend services, to build packages. And guess what? The next opportunity they went into, their client closed a 30,000 endpoint deal for the customer. So that speaks to the difference it makes. And at that point, you've seen ROI. So it became they're never
Right.
going to pay this to. They ROI'd it over one deal, which is a great testimony to what vCISO services can do if you're using them properly in your MSP.
So now that we have established a strategic value, I would say, of a
Yeah.
vCISO, and we discussed the 5 steps. But before the 5 steps, maybe there are pitfalls that we see CISOs and vCISOs fall into.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting is that scoping is a real part of the way to deliver vCISO services successfully. So again, I think some of the old school methodology for security advisory or security consulting is the Big Four model, is just some hours T&M, we're going to bill you hourly. Well, what does that get us into? That gets us into unpredictable billing cycles. It has clients nitpicking the bills apart. It's just not a good model for anyone. And we all know this as MSPs, but again, I would say making sure that you have an outcome-based scope. Okay, so we're going to deliver these 5 things for you. We're going to deliver your security assessment. We're going to deliver a risk register. We're going to deliver a risk score. We're going to give you a roadmap, right? On top of that, we have a bunch of other things we can talk about. Putting out fires. This is a strategic role. Again, it's not vCISO light. If fires need to be put out, that's why you can sell other services. And the vCISO can say, hey, we have other services to put out these fires. Once you're in the door, there's always going to be organizational politics. So you got to avoid that. And I think that's learning how to negotiate that. And I say, if you're looking to build vCISO teams, sales engineers are a great place to look, because they have kind of that political acumen, and they're also technically sound enough to understand risk strategies. That's another conversation, maybe for another webinar. But yeah, doing everything manually, not standardizing. Making recommendations that don't take compliance into account. Again, we talked about getting in fires, doing everything yourself. Listen, you are a strategic advisor as a vCISO. And again, that's part of that outcome-based scope, right? Because if it's an hourly based scope, we're going to say, well, we want you to go do this cloud security configuration for us because you know how to do it, and we'll just pay you hourly. Well, it's taking the general from surveying the battlefield down into the fog of war, and you're going to miss something.
Right.
Yeah. So again, forgetting to set expectations, we talked about that. Being too dogmatic. Again, you need to understand that you're a business enabler as a vCISO. So you are looking for good enough security. Some people might cringe when I say that, but I really think that's the way to think about it. It's good enough security is what you want to achieve as a CISO, right? Yeah, and then avoiding challenging paradigms and decisions. You can't shy away. You have to be the challenger, right? So it's playing that dance of saying, okay, hey, we're doing something wrong. We do need to fix that. I mean, I think SolarWinds is still fresh in everyone's mind about that, how that CISO was charged because he did sweep things under the rug. He didn't have the hard conversations, and he didn't disclose that they were doing some things that maybe were not exactly what they stated in their 10K. So again, that's one example, but yeah, I think important to know that you do have to tell the organization hard things sometimes, and you need to be able to do that with a good framework. And yeah, juggling too many industries. I'm a big proponent of having a good ICP or ideal client profile, especially when you're getting started. That is not only just industry specific, but even within that industry, types of clients. So for example, I talked about that 15-person SaaS startup. Well, this particular MSP has some leadership skills in their leadership team that makes that a really good type of fit client for them. And so I can't disclose more than that. But what I will say is that that's a really good client for them to lean into. And now that they have that success story, that is going to become their ICP, right?
Right.
Yeah. So again, important to focus in. And I think the more focused you can be, the more you can scale. Focus equals scale, right? And then, yeah, forgetting to integrate data from other points of the business. I think this is the benefit of an MSP that can deliver vCISO services effectively, is that you have inroads with vulnerability management, with the IT team, with many other pieces in the organization. And from a solo perspective, an independent vCISO, it's the same thing. When you get integrated, you want to make sure you're getting data points and working across the aisle for all the other teams you can, because you're going to only facilitate better service and better outcomes for the client.
My first lesson, I think, when I went to a CISO course was, if you don't want to rest in peace because of a cyber attack, you always have to think of that risk equals impact and probability.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
you really have to understand the business.
Yeah.
And if you fall into the tactics, right, the day-to-day business, and you don't, at a bird's eye view, understand the goals of the business and understand what's important, what processes are important, right? You are not going to be able to succeed in your job.
Right. Right. Yeah. I think there's a quote from Sun Tzu that says something to that effect: "Is strategy without tactics is chaos," or something to that. I butchered that, or tactics without strategy is chaos, but it's something
Yes,
similar to that effect.
I agree. So
Yeah.
so looking now at the 5 steps, right? You
Yeah.
broke this up into 5 steps for the first 100 days. Let's
Hmm.
try and address those.
Yeah, so one thing I want people to note is this is not an if then. Like we don't have to get research out of the way before we start doing the other steps. So these are kind of overlapping, but they should kind of waterfall into each other. And as I think everyone who is currently delivering vCISO services will say, they do not fit neatly into a Gantt chart every single time. So again, you're going to have some overlap, but this is the way you want to think about it and compartmentalize the way you're doing things. Again, coming from a scale perspective, we want to be able to have different resources help out in the program. We'll get into that later. But yeah, so research, right? So when you come into a client, how are you getting all the information you need to do, for that client? Yeah, I'll just run down the list: meeting stakeholders and management, meeting the IT team, getting access to all their tools and systems, analyzing all their reports, getting network diagrams. Did you have any incidents? How did they get in? Reviewing pen test reports, reviewing vulnerability management reports, conducting threat intelligence research for that type of industry or vertical and what threat actors are targeting them. That goes back to what I was talking about with focusing on certain ICPs. You're going to have a leg up because you're not reinventing the wheel every client you go into, right? So I think that's a huge piece right there. You're going to be able to speak the language of the business. You've done it for other clients. You're able to leverage economies of scale by saying, hey, this is what we're seeing work for other customers. Reviewing contracts. That's something that's, again, we talk about that business piece, understanding who do we have working for us and with us. Are there any third party MSSPs, MDR companies? In larger organizations, you might have line 3 auditors that are independent. So you want to understand the landscape here. And I just put a quick idea generator for people for like what PowerPSA uses as our default checklist. Again, we are talking about repeatable systems. So we want to go through each and every time and ask the same questions, get the same data, and get the same outputs.
And one more thing about this, I'm thinking about is how do you make sure that you get the management support? Because sometimes they might just hire you and they forget about you, right? But
Yeah.
if there is no support from leadership, it's going to be
Yep.
hard to do that initial phase.
Well, I completely agree with you, and let's go to the next slide because that's a perfect segue. I don't think you even did that on purpose. See, Yoel is tuned in, folks. So I think you want to do some meetings with management and talk about crown jewels of the business. So I think you want to find out what are the things that are existentially critical to our business and say, okay, here's the line of business applications we use. How is data stored? Where is data stored? Get those things figured out with management, and they will start to think about, okay, what if this is offline for 7 days? What if this is offline for 14 days? What if this is unrecoverable? What does that mean for the business? You ask those questions to management, that's really going to give you a mandate that they're going to say, okay, wow, we really do need to do this. So I think that's a great way to go about it, to answer your question, Yoel. Again, and we'll talk about reporting and how we bring them all together as part of that. So again, conducting a security risk assessment. I mean, this is where I'm going to sing Cynomi's praises. I think the way that they use their question-based, they compartmentalize the risk assessment process. So they have different domains with different question-based questionnaires, and you'll see that there in the lower screen. That you can actually not only bring in individual people from the customer to answer, but for your MSP. So let's say IT engineering might have some specific answers about the client's backup and disaster recovery procedures. You can go through and answer that potentially without ever even talking to the client. And that feeds into that specific part of the risk assessment. So I think the modularity of the way that the program is set up is very powerful here. Again, creating a clear picture of security and how do we do this. You'll see another screenshot of a workflow that I've designed that is, this is how we run our risk assessment every time. This is who needs to be involved, and this is when they need to be involved. And again, the way we scale these programs is, number one, having the right tool that automates and makes things easy, bringing the right personnel to the right job, and then also repetition and doing those things the same way every time, the factory floor mentality, right? Identifying short and long-term needs. So we're going to identify as part of this output, what are some glaring or critical issues, and then what things can we put in a bucket for day 2, quote unquote.
You know that one thing that we've noticed with using Cynomi, the Cynomi platform, is that MSPs, first of all, are able to really reflect the process and the outcome, the cyber posture, to their customers in a manner that they can really get
Right,
engaged.
right.
Right. So when it's just an Excel sheet with vulnerabilities,
Yeah.
why would an owner put another $50,000 worth of work
Yeah.
when he
Yeah.
doesn't understand that risk and the gaps? And that's something
Well,
that we really think about.
well, yeah, it goes back to the good enough security thing. And I think I always tell MSPs that I'm working with, you want to have a 3-filter process, right? You want to show them, what does your risk look like without our services? Okay, that's like 90% risk, no patching, no anything. What does your risk look like without security services? Okay, you're down to 60%, maybe 70%, but there's some glaring issues. And then customize for you, what do we need to do to get you to an acceptable level of risk? And that's where we talk about that risk score and how Cynomi makes that easy to give you a single number to look at, saying good or bad, thumbs up or thumbs down. But the ability then to drill into more details once you get down to talk to the IT manager or other people like that.
Right. So then the big task would be, and that's our third stage basically,
Right.
is how do we prioritize all that needs to be done because it's going to be overwhelming for our customers, right? And basically,
Well,
how do we build that a work plan once we prioritize?
yeah. So we're kind of blending, PowerPSA's operational metrics and then Cynomi's automation metrics, right?
Right.
So you see the front screenshot here. We're talking about open tasks. So again, after you've run those question-based risk assessments, you put in, you put in artifacts to show we are or we aren't doing these things, and you're going to get a open task with most critical items, right? So Cynomi's going to bubble those up. And you may look at them and say, okay, well, this one we actually want to move into day 2. Bottom line, you're getting 90% of the way there, right? But then we look at a couple screenshots from a board report slide that a template that I put together. As we talk about, what do boards want to know? They want to know what's our risk and what do we need to do to improve and how much is it going to cost and what is the benefit we get for that. So that's not just boards, that's business owners, that's anybody in decision-making authority, right? So again, short, mid, and long-term goals. You get those all stacked up, and then your vCISO, right? So I like to think, let's talk quick operations here, quick sidebar. So let's think about the process, right? So now you've been able to take lower skilled resources than a vCISO, who's one of your higher paid people typically, right? They're able to go out, modularly answer different questions, different modules, different domains for what is the customer doing. The customer gives feedback. Those then roll up into the portal. The vCISO has not spent their time doing that now. Your most expensive resource, who's the one doing the risk determination, comes into the portal, looks at this, makes some adjustments, massages it a little bit, and then puts together the slide deck and delivers to the client. So now you're building scale in, you're spreading the workload, you're building a scalable model. So in any case, sidebar done. Let's go back to the slides here. Identifying 2 to 3 quick wins. We see priority HACCP improvements. Here's what we do. Here's the risk reduction, right? Then we look at, okay, here's the estimated risk amount, and here's what we're asking for in cyber budget increase. Okay. Well, you see there, risk is drastic in that back slide. Risk is drastically down, right? And cyber budget is a moderate increase comparably. So rather than the customer looking at that and saying, well, that's too expensive without really any real frame of reference, all of a sudden we're looking at that actually looks like a pretty good bargain to get some more services in.
Right. And
Once we,
obviously, after we have all that, we have to execute.
yeah, there you go. So
The easy part.
Yeah. So again, another thing why I like Cynomi is all those questions that you've answered then feed into your policies. So I think one thing that's really unique that Cynomi does is generate policies, but then show you in the policies whether you're meeting those policies or not based on your controls. So we say we're doing MFA everywhere. Well, are we actually? And if we're not, that needs to go to a task, right? So I love that module in the Cynomi platform for that. And then taking all that information, we looked at those data before, and then this is a graphic, again, another template that I've created, and creating an easy to show roadmap to the customer saying, okay, here's what we need to do. Here's what we've done. We've actually reduced risk a lot. And then here's all the stuff we need to do in the long-term roadmap. So this is how we communicate the plan to all stakeholders. So, your question before, how do we get management involved? Well, we've kind of set the stage with getting them to think about what does it mean if we're not doing the things we should be, like high level, it's existential to the business. Okay, well, how do we fix it? How much is it going to cost? What's the value we're getting? And then finally, okay, we've kind of all agreed on that. Here's our tactics, right? We've done all the strategy. Here is our tactical execution. Okay. So again, focusing on high impactful wins. Here's the 3 things you need to do today. And then we're going to spread the rest of this out over the next year. And we're not going to overwhelm you. We're not going to overwhelm your users. But then we're going to we're creating a pipeline for revenue and profit in our MSP. So that becomes a virtuous circle where not only is the customer becoming safe, we're getting fairly paid to deliver this security strategy. And we're also getting paid for the recommendations we're making. And we're not making the recommendations out of FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. We're not making them out of anything less than a virtuous attempt to secure the client. So everybody wins, right? So we're getting paid profitably. The customer is getting more secure. They're seeing value on their security services. And bottom line, they're keeping their business afloat and keeping their business sustainable, which again, you said 2024 is the year of the vCISO, and I'll add a rider to that and say that I'm hearing the term cyber resiliency more and more. And I think that's a great way to think about it. It's not if, it's when. Now, that's not FUD, but we want to be resilient. So if we have the right controls in place and I've identified the systems that we need to focus our attention in to make sure that they're safe, we can be resilient against an attack. So an attack may have an impact on us. We may be down for a day or two, or not even, or we might just have a day of where we're all running around with our hair on fire to kick the attackers out of the environment. But it does not pose a threat to the business. And so I think that is extremely important to keep in mind as you work through this with your clients.
I think that also people are going to get attacked, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the major question is if you're well prepared and you know to anticipate things, then the stage of shock is smaller, is shorter.
Right.
And then the impact
Exactly.
is less painful, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And so if we can say, what does it cost our business a day, every day that we're down? Okay, it's a couple $100,000 probably, if not $50,000 a day. Well, if we're down for 14 days, what does that look like? Well, maybe we could take 10% of that and spend it on security so that we're not down for those days. And again, it goes back to that slide of showing that the risk, the ROI of actually spending some on cyber controls. Now we're putting it in dollars and cents in the terms of the business, and everybody's speaking the same language, and it goes back again to the vCISO being a business enabler and able to talk business with the stakeholders.
Right. And to be able to talk to the stakeholders, I always say you have to speak the management language.
Yeah.
And management language is graphs, colors, and scores, right? Reporting.
That's right. Yep.
Probably at the end, the most time-consuming effort that usually on a manual process you produce.
Yep.
But here we're already 45 days in and all the way to 100, and you're talking about reporting this phase.
Yeah. So again, I have a template that I use for the initial report to the client's executive team. An even more colorful and less detailed slide deck we use for the board or other just TLDR type people, right? But you'll see here that within that report, integrating Cynomi data. So again, summary score. I love that summary score, 5.4%. Or you think about it in terms of 54%, right? So we're kind of in the middle, med high risk. So this particular client, this is actually not stolen. This is slightly modified, and the name's redacted from that SaaS client I was talking about. So by implementing these scores, implementing the things that we had recommended, they increased their environment score by 35 percentage points. So again, this is something I want to give a tip to MSPs watching this is always start with the good news, right? So we asked you to spend some money, you did that, and you've actually done a great job by increasing your score by 35 percentage points. Here's all the other things we're still working on. And with that said, here's some individual areas that we need to still continue to work on. And the report continues with all of that. One of those pages being the attack vector score, saying, hey, here's where we're sitting, right? We're not in the red anymore. We've climbed out of the red, but we still have further to go. So we can feel a lot better. And we actually won a deal So we've just ROI'd our entire year for the security program. Let's continue to do that and continue to secure ourselves. So it's a great story, right? When you're talking to
Right.
management and you're talking to boards here.
Yeah,
And then
so
again, oh, go
we're
ahead.
going to
Go ahead.
actually add this month a timeline. So you will be
Yes.
able to tell the story. We were a 2.2. Then after 3 months, we became a
Yes.
3 now. Now you're a 5.4.
Trending is management loves trending.
Yes.
So are we trending the right way or the wrong way? And if we are trending the right way, what do we need to do to continue trending the right way? And if we're trending the wrong way, what do we need to correct that? Again, it makes the discussion easier. Reassess and readjust, communicate, right? Again, there needs to be a modular way to continue to repeat these reports on a monthly or quarterly basis with your clients. We talk about that outcome-based scope. We're going to deliver you a risk report and which you're going to be able to show that you're doing security due diligence once a month or once a quarter, whatever your requirements are. And so again, we're helping customers build that evidence and evidence their security program for investors, for auditors, for clients who are looking at their security stack. Again, I've been on the other side, and I am on the other side of filling out DDQs, and I'm using an acronym, due diligence questionnaires for MSP clients who are getting those from their clients. So when you're getting bad responses from a vendor and you just know that they don't have good security, it puts you in a bad spot. But when a vendor comes in and says, yeah, here's our answers, here's what we're doing, here's where our security program is, we have some risk, but we're working on it. That is a breath of fresh air. And when an MSP can enable their clients to be that breath of fresh air to their target market, you've positioned yourself as a trusted advisor and you've really become sticky and valuable to the business at that point. And it's not vCISO light.
Right. So we're short in time, and just maybe just to summarize those 5 steps and
Yep. Yeah. So research, right? Research and understand. You're doing those things kind of parallel, and you'll see this here as they do kind of overlap. Once you understand, once you've done your assessment, start prioritizing based on the business's particular and customized footprint. Begin to execute, show that execution, show how it's creating value for the client, show how where we need to go, where we are today, and where we've come, and you'll build yourself a very sustainable pipeline of service with that client over the long term.
yeah. And whoever wants to download the full playbook can scan this
Oh,
barcode.
yeah. Thanks for reminding me there. Yeah. So again, this was a co-marketing effort with Cynomi and ourselves. And again, I was not paid to do this. I just want to put that out there. this was the fact that
It's
Cynomi
a
and our team.
partnership.
Well, right. I think since we started talking, we've both been very aligned on enabling MSPs to effectively deliver risk services to their clients. And again, we know that we can't get to every single MSP out there. And I think Cynomi may actually get there, but
Hopefully, we'll see.
yeah. But the point is we want to enable partners to be able to deliver those risk services. This is about upskilling the industry and helping MSPs and enabling them to really go to that next level and become those trusted advisors and security risk advisors to their clients.
I participated in a few sales calls of my partners just to learn and see the value.
Yeah.
And two calls that I participated in. One was presenting to a CIO of a company, and the number of times that the reaction from that CIO was, "I love it, I love it, I love it. It makes total sense. Now I know what needs to be done
Right.
on a security level." And the MSP made a sale.
Yeah.
And you could really see the need from the end user for the vCISO service.
Yeah.
And it was really amazing. But another thing that I saw on a call was having a IT guy answering the Cynomi questionnaires and the
Right.
manager looking at the results.
Yeah.
And going through the questionnaires, the IT guy goes, I don't know. I have to check. So it really got them engaged in understanding all their infrastructure.
Yep.
And the manager, once he saw the scores, we talked about graphs, colors, and scores, said, why am I a 3 and not an 8? And they
Yep.
started talking amongst themselves what needs to be done. And that
Yeah.
also got the sale for that MSP.
Yep.
So it was really amazing to see that the enabler, I would say, for sales as well.
Well, right. I mean, you're creating a partnership. That's what you're doing. You know, it becomes this not, I feel like the MSP is trying to sell me something, but again, I love that term, is it's a virtuous circle with the MSP helping the customer and getting paid fairly to do it, right? That's how it should be.
And maybe we'll conclude before even the thank you here. And obviously, you have a PowerPSA here program and Cynomi that you can download again.
Mhm.
I want to talk about maybe three key values, and we talked just now about partnerships.
Right.
When Cynomi's key values are, one is it's really a partnership. It's keep the end user, although we don't sell to end users. We partner up with the MSPs and cyber consultancies, but it's really keeping the end user in mind because you want to get them engaged. And when we talk about a partnership with you, it's listening to your needs and to be able to evolve together to make sure that
Right.
your processes are really are part of this platform, and together we'll be able to serve the end users. That
Yeah.
every company really gets a vCISO service, so they're security protected, I would say, and have that strategy
Hmm.
implemented.
Hmm.
And last but not least, and I want to say this to everybody out there, I know that compliance and regulation is driving the market. We said that before in insurance, but remember, you can be compliant, but you're not secure.
Yeah.
And Cynomi always takes the approach of first, let's be secure. Let's give you the security posture, and then let's tell you how compliant ready you are for the regulations that are out there.
Hmm.
Jesse,
Yeah.
thank you. It was a pleasure being with you here today, and I look forward to many more. And and I would like to thank all the audience for listening in to us.
Yeah, it's great conversation. I know I was really having to edit myself because we could have turned this into an hour and a half discussion, right? But I think that's good. Is, you know, when you and I get together, it's always we get passionate about what we're doing, and I think we're both
Yes.
passionate about helping MSPs deliver risk services to their clients. So again, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure to kind of try and disseminate this information a little bit. Yeah, obviously you see on the screen there's a QR code you can scan. I think that's follow me on LinkedIn. But you know, I post daily with more tips. So I try to break these down and actually provide value to MSPs. And again, you know, using Cynomi, I think, is a great way to get build in modularity to your program and scale it with less personnel. And then obviously, if you want to either build your own vCISO program or use a turnkey MSP vCISO program built by vCISOs or built by MSPs for MSPs, we'd love to talk and see how we can work together.
Thank you again, and have a great day.
Yeah, take care, everybody.